parish for me or anyone else to have to come back to you and for you to have to debate this. I think that's one issue that would be before us. The wording or the phrase public safety has been brought up in the last few moments. And I would argue that that is true, except in that issue in relationship to schools primarily and playgrounds. If public safety is an issue, it is not safe for our kids. There's a buffer zone in place that a lot of other municipalities recognize, that we have recognized for a long period of time, that you are continuing to recognize by keeping those distances in there. And so in recognition of that, then, again, my question continues to be, where would the exceptions lie? And finally, I would just say that I would much prefer that this debate be as it is tonight, when it's philosophy-driven, when it's principle-driven. Do we believe this should happen? Do we not believe it should happen? Rather than it being personality-driven, which is what's going to happen in the waiver process. When there is an individual entity, the debate becomes personality-driven instead of principle-driven, and I think that's a mistake. Thank you.
Mr. Terrio.
Yes, I know you had some questions in dealing with the distances from the church and the schools. Mr. Ascott, can you clarify, does this change those distances for, it keeps them from what I understand, the 300 feet?
Yes, sir, and Pastor Horn and I had a good conversation on the phone a week or so ago.
Sir.
Yeah, and the distance.
I want to make sure it stayed there. Now, also in dealing with the waivers, as he mentioned, and Carly, I don't know if I should get you involved in this too, but in dealing with the waivers, where and what are our examples of potential waivers, and who would they come before in order to grant them?
Waivers would be made by application to the council under the proposed ordinance.
And the waivers would be for, would it include, say, within the 300 feet?
The distances would apply such that it would require the applicant to make to request a waiver from the council.
But again, if we have an ordinance that says 300 feet, why would they request a waiver?
Well, because the ordinance also builds into it the ability to ask for and obtain a waiver. And depending upon whether you're in the unincorporated areas of the parish or the city, the distances are different.
Right, I saw that.
Right.
And then that's where I get a little bit, it gets a little foggy on me, in that, like he mentioned, is that you're talking about public safety, and here we talked about imminent danger and all kinds of things that we've had discussions on tonight, but yet 300 feet, which is actually just 100 yards from a school or a church or playgrounds, whatever, where you got children or whatever, there's still the ability for somebody to apply for a waiver that might be granted by this council or someone in the future that would allow them to bypass the initial intent of what the ordinance is stating.
Well, if we need to back up, you're talking about the current code versus the proposed ordinance?
Right.
Under the current code in the city of Lafayette, the only establishment that can ask for a waiver is a restaurant. Okay? The proposed ordinance changes that to include any establishment.
Right.
So that's the first change. Secondly, under the current code in the city of Lafayette, for the restaurant waiver issue, the school, church, playground, etc., is the one that has the power to say yes or no to the waiver. In the proposed ordinance, that power is granted to the governing authority of the city of Lafayette, that being the council.
Okay.
That's the difference. In the parish, again, it's different distances, but the waiver is available to any establishment, not just restaurants, in the unincorporated areas.
Okay, and I don't know where this will go, but, and if you don't mind, think about it. I want to amend the new one to make it to where it applies again just to restaurants. Because you said the initial one was just to, you can grant a
The
waiver just
current-
to restaurants?
The current code talks about just restaurants.
Okay, so you're saying the previous one was a waiver, anybody could ask for a waiver. Now you're saying the current code? That's not what I understood a minute ago.
When I say current code, I mean the current alcohol code in effect prior to adoption of this ordinance.
Right.
So the current code leading up to this
Gotcha.
point only allows for a restaurant establishment
Right.
to request a waiver,
This ordinance will allow anybody,
any establishment.
any establishment. Well, I'd like to make an amendment to take that any establishment, and only make it restaurants.
Well, in order to do that, I'd have to tell you that because of the comprehensive nature of this ordinance, a floor amendment in an attempt to make that change to this one provision, it has fingers. It may affect other provisions in this ordinance that from a legal standpoint, I would suggest then that we consider deferring to allow legal to go back and make sure that if we change one word in paragraph A, 3 words in paragraph Z have not been rendered useless.
I see where you're coming, and let me ask you this, and maybe it's something to alleviate that, is that under the current code, you said that the church or the school were the authority, but under this right here would make the council the authority in order to grant the waiver.
And another important thing I need to add to that, not only is the current ordinance, the proposed ordinance, granting the power to grant or deny a waiver to the council, it also gives the council the ability to grant that waiver with or without conditions.
Except, yeah, conditions.
And so if the council were to say in an applicant's request for a waiver that we want to impose, conditions A, B, C, and D, it has the power under the proposed ordinance to do so. And so,
That's if whatever council at that point would do that.
absolutely.
There may be some council, we're going to grant you a waiver and let it roll, and, put it, 50 feet from the school or the church.
Absolutely.
That is a possibility,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, that's all I have for now, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Robideau.
Thank you, and I wanted to just make sure that Mr. Terrio and the council was aware of limiting it to just a restaurant is the reason that we expanded it, because as we talk about trying to locate grocery stores that may or may not have an aisle or two that includes liquor, that's not even allowed under the current ordinances. And so we tried to open it up to where it wasn't limited to just restaurants, or if an establishment, not that I'm promoting Marcello's or Philippe's, but if there's a mixed-use residential development downtown and wanted one of those types of tenants, that the term restaurant would effectively exclude them, exclude grocery stores, exclude a whole lot of other establishments. And look, as I think y'all know, we tried to come up with the perfect ordinance, and we failed. It's not really possible, which is why we ended up deferring to giving the council the authority to say, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense. And so that's why we ended up changing it from just the restaurants. And before you took up the amendment, I wanted to at least address the grocery store issue with you. But if the ordinance, if the amendment is pulled, then
That's not the case at this time.
got you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Boudreaux, do I still have 2 minutes left? Can I comment on something that's been said? Because I'm confused about something now.
Your time had actually expired. You had discontinued your comments. I think Mr. Terrio raised a question is what
That
actually happened.
2:24 is not my time left?
Yeah. Well, the clock actually stopped because you stopped when you were finished your comments, if I recall.
But a statement by Mr. Escott raises a real question for me that I think would be important.
If somebody wants to ask you a question, they can, but your time has expired. See, I just planted a seed. I knew Mr. Terrio would bail you out. He's jumping at the bit, but this sets protocol for meetings. And until you set in a chairman's position, that becomes difficult. And as a pastor, I know you have protocols.
I have sat in that chair,
So,
sir.
yeah, and that's what some people don't understand about this process, is that just like Mr. Green said earlier, which he was wrong, because Kenneth Boudreaux would never do it, he thought somebody got extra time. We don't do that because everybody's watching is now gonna want what Pastor got. And that's what creates problems for bodies, but until you're in a leadership position, some people just don't recognize that. But Mr. Terrio has a question for you.
Yeah, and look, some people think Mr. Boudreaux is a pastor or a preacher also, so.
Oh,
there
that's
it
one
is.
thing they don't think. They think other things, but pastor and preacher's not one of
Mr.
them.
Horn, no, I know where you're going from, so elaborate us. I know a lot of people on the council would like to hear what you have to say.
I would say that the church presently in the code does not have the power to restrict. What I would prefer to say is that a church or school or entity has the power to permit. It is the law that has the power to restrict the waiver.
That'd be a valid statement, Mr. Escott?
No, sir.
Well, could you elaborate?
The way I read the code, the current code,
Got you.
under the City of Lafayette regarding waiver of distance for restaurant establishments under 636A1A, item 5 indicates that with reference to the restaurant establishment, notwithstanding the distances, where the church, the synagogue, the school, the library agrees in writing, then and only then can the council waive the distance requirements by resolution. So it's a condition precedent to the waiver by the council.
Okay, Mr. Horn? You got it? All right. That's all we have, guys. Thanks much. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right, next speaker, please.
Brian Poche. Jeff Dyer. Pass. Pat Trahan. Pass. Dale Hoffpower.
Dale Huffpire, pastor Nouvelle Church. I live in Broussard, and I know y'all spent a lot of time and a lot of work on it. So our group of pastors would share the same sentiment as Dr. Horn. We would have preferred the work he did on the amendments to have included the waiver situation to stay as it is, but if you have proceeded in this direction, we're just going to count on you to do the right thing, and we all want our communities to be safe, and I just want you to know we appreciate y'all and all you do. I know it's been a long evening, and just know we love you and we're praying for you.
Thank you. Hadn't heard anybody say they're praying for the council in a long time.
And finally, Mr. Chair, Connie Boyer signed in. She did not wish to speak, but signed in opposition to the ordinance. That concludes the blue cord.
Okay, so we've already voted on the amendment that has, we have heard all the blue cards and we've had all council discussion. No one is chiming up to want to do anything in addition. So at this point, let's call the vote on the ordinance.
District 3?
Yes.
District 4?
Yes.
District 6?
Yes.
District 7?
Yes.
District 8?
Yes.
District 9? District 1? District 2? Motion to adopt as amended is approved.
Okay, we're going to move to ordinances for introduction. I'll take a motion in a second for global. Motion by Nakhan, second by Lewis.
Ordinance 92, 2017, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council providing for the issuance and sale of public improvement sales tax refunding bonds, Series 2017A, of the City of Lafayette, State of Louisiana, prescribing the form of said bonds, providing the fixing the maturities of and interest rates on said bonds, providing for the payment of said bonds and the application of the proceeds thereof to the refunding of certain bonds of said city, approving the preliminary official statement in connection therewith, providing for the acceptance of an offer to purchase said bonds, and providing for other matters in connection therewith. Ordinance 93, 2017, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council authorizing the Lafayette Mayor President to enter into an intergovernmental agreement by and between Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government and the Law Enforcement District of the Parish of Lafayette, providing for the payment by Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government of 15% of the fees collected for all new and renewal alcoholic beverage permits issued to permittees whose establishments are located in the unincorporated areas of the Parish of Lafayette under Chapter 6 of the Code, as well as 15% of all fines and fees collected pursuant to violations by said permittees of the provisions of Chapter 6 of the Code that occur in the unincorporated areas of the Parish of Lafayette, to the Law Enforcement District of the Parish of Lafayette, and to amend the fiscal year 1617 operating budget of the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government by increasing parish liquor and beer permit revenue by $3,611 and appropriating in general account to reimburse the Lafayette Parish Sheriff for permit enforcement. Ordinance 94, 2017, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council declaring the North University Avenue, Stone Avenue Right Turn Lane project a public necessity and authorizing the acquisition of the necessary rights-of-way, immovable property, and other property rights requisite to the construction of said project, either on an amicable basis or through the use of the expropriation process if necessary. Ordinance 95, 2017, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council amending the fiscal year 1617 capital budget of the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government by transferring $750,000 from the Ambassador Caffrey Parkway Rehabilitation Project to the Concrete Streets Repairs Project within the Public Works Department for additional funding needed. Ordinance 96, 2017, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council amending the fiscal year 1617 operating budget of the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government by authorizing the increase of revenues in the amount of $200,850 received from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development through the Louisiana Housing Corporation for Emergency Solutions Grant Program, appropriating within the Community Development Department, and decreasing the use of City General Fund prior year fund balance by $5,850, recognizing the administrative fees to be received from this grant. Ordinance 97, 2017, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council declaring the building or structure located at 1246 Southwest Evangeline Thruway, Lafayette, Louisiana, owned by Ralph Isidore Jr., Edward Isidore, Albert Isidore, and Margaret Isidore, care of Gerald J. Block, attorney appointed, to be dilapidated and dangerous to the public welfare, and ordering the condemnation of same.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any council discussions on any of these items? There is none. Is any blue cards on any of these items?
No, sir.
Okay, please call the vote.
District 4?
Yes.
District 6? Yes. District 7? District 8? Yes. District 9?
Yes.
District 1?
Yes.
District 2? Yes. District 3?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Right, thank you very much. Meeting adjourned.
Good night, everyone.
Put you through your paces tonight. Put you through your paces tonight, Will.
Hey, Pat. Yes, sir. That, turn lane on Stone Avenue, you familiar?